Hello and good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining this week's webinar. I am Jose Enrique Camacho, your host for today. And today, we will be discussing the topic of discretionary investment management. Now, before we begin, I'd like to remind everyone that this webinar will be recorded and that copies will be disseminated within the day through the various social media platforms. To add, we do have a Q&A portion and we'd love to be able to get to your answers, to your questions. So you may ask your questions by sending them in through the buttons below your screen. With that, let me now introduce our speaker for today. Marcy Kohchet-Chua is the head of ATR Asset Management's wealth business. She is a certified chartered wealth manager with over 17 years of experience in investment products, sales leadership, and of course, wealth management. And something she is very passionate about is helping her clients navigate through the complex investing world we have today, especially given this pandemic. So with that, welcome, Marcy. Hi.
Hi, and a very good morning, King. And of course, a very, very good morning to our audience today. I'm actually quite thrilled to be asked to take care of our educational series. As you know, ATRAM has been running this webinar consistently since March, and every week we tackle a particular area of interest of our audience. And today, that would be about discretionary investment management and actually having a discretionary investment account.
Okay, so we do have quite an audience today, Marcy, so let's just get straight to it. What is discretionary investment management?
Thank you for that, King. I think it's important for the audience to first be aware that ATRAM is functioning with a trust license. So a discretionary investment management account is something that we can readily provide to investors. And a major factor in having a discretionary investment account is really that it is professionally managed. So it actually requires dedicated attention of a portfolio manager. And that portfolio manager is not somebody who just has years of experience in investing, but it is important to note that certification is a critical requirement for that role. More often than not, a portfolio manager would have a certification as a chartered financial analyst, a CFA. And for those in the audience who's not quite familiar with that, that is actually quite a training. It's a series of learnings that has to be done by an investment specialist. And once they go through the hoops from a level 1 to a level 2 to a level 3, they become full-fledged CFAs if they pass all the exams and the certification required. So quite an intensive training that would be required for portfolio managers. And that portfolio manager is actually the one making the investment decision within the client's mandate. A portfolio manager actually individually and independently manages the funds that are found inside the portfolio of the client, but all based on the risk profile as well as the needs and the goals of that client. So if you're asking, what does that exactly mean that they independently manage and they decide? Well, the client actually no longer needs to make their own choices because it is especially difficult and quite burdensome to do that if you don't have all the necessary information, not just to look at one fund, but to look at the context by which a fund needs to be invested in. So that's actually how it works. And when somebody wants to access this professional investment management in ATRAM, they will actually open a discretionary investment management account. I hope that was clear, Kane.
Yeah. Yes, Marcy. Very clear. So it seems to differ from what a lot of people might be used to when it comes to investing. That they're given a list of funds or investment products, and they're left alone with making that decision. But with what you're describing, it sounds a lot more convenient. That's one. And secondly, you're able to rely on the expertise of these highly qualified portfolio managers. So I'd like to ask, how does it exactly work? And I guess, is there any level of involvement from the client?
Definitely there is. In fact, even if I had explained that the actual decision making and the choices that are being made by clients um, are actually taken over by the portfolio manager, it is important to note that this is actually a partnership. And it starts from the very beginning when the client is able to define to ATRAM and to the portfolio manager specifically what is their goal. Is it to get regular income from their portfolio? Is it to preserve the capital because they are now preparing for a future that this could be transferred uh, to the next generation? Or what they really after is to prepare for retirement, and they are about 5 years away, 10 years away from that retirement, and what they want is to see capital growth. So they're already setting aside money, starting, for example, with 5 million pesos that they have saved up, and they want to set it aside in order to realize a significant growth for when a time will come that they no longer will actually have regular income flows. And yes, that can all be well prepared. And it's important to have actually a partner to ensure that that is happening while that client or while that investor is still focused on their own livelihood, on their own area of expertise. And what we do once we get that goal defined, we also marry it to the risk appetite and risk profile of the client. Those two need to go very well together because somebody who is young, wanting to go for growth, but is actually quite averse to risk, there is actually a mismatch in that kind of expectation. So we take care and we have in-depth conversations with clients in that kind of situation so that we can come to an agreement on what exactly will be the framework by which ATRAM's portfolio managers will make decisions on their portfolio. And what do we do when we make the decisions? We actually provide them different kinds of strategies. They can choose from those strategies that will give them a diversified exposure. Now, why is diversification necessary? This has become more pronounced, particularly in this pandemic, because diversification actually gives exposure beyond one geography, one country, beyond a particular set of assets, but really diversifying and spreading out opportunities, exposure to opportunities, as well as exposure to risk. So it is important that the client actually realizes that having exposure to global assets, to global areas, is not a risk by itself. It is a risk if everything is focused in that area. But if it's well diversified, well thought out, well planned, and allocated, it will actually work. And to tell you the truth, King, since March, when all of these things have happened, in most of the markets, we've seen equities seeing a major downtrend everywhere, and also a pickup in some other parts of the world. That has actually benefited the clients of ATRAM who are exposed in this kind of strategy and portfolio and is actively managed by their portfolio managers.
Okay, Marcy. So there are actually a lot of words here on this slide. There's a mention of diversification, geographies, and countries. What are the investment sectors that? Oh, there it is. So, can you please tell us about the investment themes that ATRAM is looking at?
Thanks, King. I'm actually very happy to share with our audience today that a big part of what a discretionary investment management will require is really awareness for what is happening, not just in the Philippines, but all over the world. And what is happening outside of just COVID is really a change in the way economies are developing, in the way industries are coming out of this pandemic. And it's really about identifying the sectors that will thrive, not just this year, but in the long term, outside of what has changed coming from this pandemic. And that identification right now is showing up in particular sectors. And these particular sectors, which are in technology, in the health sciences, in environment and social governance, and even in alternative assets like gold. And also an identification of the countries that are showing that they are going through the recovery much faster than other parts of the world. These are important investment themes. And these are exactly the themes that are helping us and our ATRAM portfolio managers to identify the opportunities and what should be in the portfolio of our clients. So the bigger question is actually, well, if those are the themes, how do we get access to them? The answer, it is important that there is actually a wide range of funds that could be made available for the client's portfolios to be able to enjoy the results of having this in their portfolio. And we had been ready to do this since actually the middle of May. So our clients in their portfolios with discretionary investment management, helping them, is actually exposed already to this particular investment theme.
Okay, so I guess that's what active management really means. So you have the decision making, and to add, you have an access to a wide array of in different investment classes and sectors. So what kind of situations or lifestyles prompts clients to avail of this type of service?
That's a very good question, King. And I think I don't want to really define and actually put a label to any particular person or need, but there is just something that's quite common to people who had been coming to us for this kind of help. And to tell you frankly, it doesn't mean that you have to be a sophisticated investor. In fact, we find that most people who need this kind of service and this kind of partnership when they do their investment are actually not as sophisticated and very possible that they are beginner investors. And it's great that they choose to have a partner in ATRAM because they learn along the way from experts, from professionals who are ready, who had gone through decades and many years of experience in managing investments and are ready to actually work on a long-term basis with these kinds of clients. So they could be, as I said, preparing for retirement. It is possible that they are already retired and that they now want to go through proper preservation, but still be able to enjoy some capital appreciation. And actually, very, very common now is to ask if bonds in the market are now not able to deliver significant yields, and because of the interest rates being low, where can I find income? And that as well is a very important goal. And that is a goal that the strategies, proper design of portfolio strategies can be done. And we have been able to do that in the discretionary investment accounts of our clients because of the way that we do the active management and design of the strategies for them. We have many clients now enjoying this who are able to actually realize monthly income, quarterly income, and even annual income. And always the definition of what that income should be, what is the total expectation that they have from that portfolio, that is always decided on in partnership with the client.
Okay, thank you for that, Marcy. You mentioned a while ago the term long term, which stuck out to me. So, what is the way of thinking or the mindset when it comes to managing clients' portfolios and investments?
First of all, the fact that it is within our trust license that ATRAM operates a discretionary investment management account. It always would be with prudence that we approach these things. But coupled with prudence is really an understanding of the right match between risk and return. So we're not really just looking at um, just a discussion about I want the best or the highest return. More than anything else, and with the way the markets have become quite complex and the cycles of um, investing is shorter now, and you will always be in a situation that a crisis is happening. The more important approach is really about looking at the risk. And in ATRAM, our investment philosophy is primarily driven by risk management. So we want to make sure that the downtrends are cushioned, the downtrends are limited for the client's portfolio, because in the long run, if there are returns on that portfolio, that could easily be erased if the risk is not the one that's managed. So when there is risk management, that means there is risk-adjusted returns that can consistently be counted on by clients, by investors over the medium to long term. And that can only happen if there is independent and fundamental research that happens and is the basis by which investments are made by the client. And clearly, if you don't have the wide array of products to choose from in order to execute what the research has been showing you, what the markets are actually moving to, then there won't be any kind of management. But in ATRAM, because of the way that we are equipped with a wide range of funds that we can choose from, that we can evaluate and identify to be good for the portfolios of our clients, we can execute the active management very, very well.
Okay, Marcy. So you've mentioned a lot of things from risk management to active management in terms of the decision making of the portfolio managers. How do these all come into play, especially given today's markets? You know, you have the pandemic with quite a volatile market environment.
That's a very, very interesting question. And I'm sure many in the audience have been having fear and would always ask the question, uh, is it the right time to invest? No? Ngayon na ba? Um, and probably a smaller group has taken advantage of that in their own way. They have been doing their own directional investing. They're making their own decisions. But the truth is, there is never a right time. What is more important is that you are well informed to do it and that your goals are very clear. And those goals and also how you benchmark performance becomes very, very important. And I'd like to show on the screen now, this is the performance, for example, of our diversified moderate multi-asset portfolio, which is cutting across global equities. It has allocation to global equities, global fixed income, local or Philippine equities, and also Philippine fixed income. And in fact, sometime earlier this year has had exposure even to gold. The way that this performance has been since May 2011 until May 2020 is showing that against the benchmark by which we are comparing the design of this portfolio and how the rest of the markets are actually performing, we have outperformed the benchmark. So the global multi-asset benchmark had only delivered 56.29%, for example, but for that same period of time, our portfolio had actually performed at 58.57%. So from 2011 to 2020. And if you notice in the line, there are even periods where the difference is so far. So the benchmark um, is actually what all investors will be able to see, where they can actually take a look at how well are our decisions performing against what everybody else are doing in the market, no? And this is a clear proof that active management, a diversified approach, works effectively, and that it is a very good cushion in times when there is a downtrend in the market.
Okay, so I guess this really looks like proof that investing done right with professionals will generate the much needed long-term and consistent growth. So is ATRAM the only one that is doing this type of service in the country?
Actually, no.
Okay.
This is not a new idea. I'm sure our audience, some of them, and maybe the others now who are curious about this, will find out that a discretionary investment management account is actually something that is quite commonly found in other very good financial institutions. But I think the most important thing that they should now look for is that is the skill to execute it and the competence to execute it effectively in the way that clients are expecting it to be, that it will be good for them, and to be in the way that they are given sufficient time to focus on their livelihood, and they will rely now on the experts to make the decisions for them. I think that's the most important, because if you have that and you know that there is integrity in that institution, there has been a history of trustworthiness, of delivery, of proper performance, as well as really transparency in how things are being done, and even that they are learning from the journey, that they are already going to learn from that journey. I think those are all the most important factors. So it is not just a matter of it's available everywhere or that it is common and it's just a matter of discovering it, but ask the questions and find out and do your due diligence in finding out who will actually do it, how much experience has been there, and what has been the historical performance that they could check out and rely on as they make the decision to see if a discretionary, diversified kind of approach into management is going to work for them. And I think at this point, King, I'd like to just emphasize that in ATRAM, when investors come and work with us, we really go beyond advisory. There are many, many good advisors that are now able to take clients through financial planning, that are able to guide them so that they can make their own decisions on what funds they will invest in, on what assets they will invest in. And they can proceed in that way if that is their comfort level. But if they find that this is now the time to have partners to professionally help them and actually take over those decisions and actions, at ATRAM, we will go beyond advisory. We will take the decisions and we will take the action. Because our objective is that our clients' investments become resilient during down markets and actually grow and have capital appreciation consistently for the long term. And I think that will be my last point in today's educational series.
Thank
Back to you,
you
Ken.
very much. Thank you very much, Marcy, for that informative and educational talk. We've piqued a lot of interest from our viewers, so we do have a lot of questions lined up for you. So let me pull them up.
Thank you.
So first things first, is I think you've touched on this as well. a while ago. So is now a good time to invest given the pandemic and the current market volatility?
Um, I think the opportunities that have been presenting themselves in this pandemic, the fact that we were all caught by surprise, and the way the markets have actually reacted to it, and even the situation now, um, with how economies will have to go through a recovery and in different speeds and in different journeys. This in itself is actually an opportunity. As they would always say, we cannot let a good crisis go to waste. And the better time to do it is now, if you're just starting now. So the bigger question is, where are you in your investment journey? Because that in itself will also define, do you have the necessary cash to start investing? Do you have the necessary um, information to actually make that decision? So I think that will require a little bit more discussion, but I will emphasize, if you're already well informed, you are ready to come into the market, by all means, go ahead, but make sure that you do have the right decisions, you have a benchmark in mind, and you also have a clear goal where you're going to when you make that long-term investment happen.
Okay, thank you for that, Marcy. Here's another one. This question is on income. So, are you able to provide portfolios with regular income? And this question is also asking about the regularity of it.
Okay. Yes, there are actually two approaches because regular can be defined as it is triggered by a client. The client will actually make the decision on when they would want to realize income out of their portfolio. So that the portfolios of ATRAM, the fact that it is made up of funds, of different kinds of funds within the allocation strategies that have been defined for those portfolios. Um, that is something that can be defined by the clients. When they want to realize income, it's very flexible. But there's also a design where the regularity of it can be monthly, can be quarterly, can be semi-annually, can be annually. Um, so it is customized in that way for every client. The strategy is discussed in depth with the client on how we structure actually those kinds of portfolios, and we will want to make them very comfortable in order to understand what kind of investments they will be exposed to and how those investments are actually generating the expected income, the expected regular income for them. So regularity is a matter of customization. It can be done. And the way it is triggered is also very flexible.
Okay, thank you for that, Marcy. Here's another one. Once enrolled as a client, what is the minimum holding period without incurring any fees?
Okay. Nako, so very interesting yung question because I think that's
Yes.
the way that investments are used to now. There are holding periods. There are penalties if they take it out.
Indeed.
There's actually no requirement of that sort in the kind of portfolio, in the discretionary portfolio that we do. What clients are only charged with is an annual service fee because we proactively manage the portfolio and we look after it, and that's our daily activity as a company. But if they want to take it out, it is a liquidity situation for them at a certain point in time. By all means, it is something that they can do at any point in time. There are actually no penalties that will be charged to them. I will caution though that this kind of approach is really for people who are already with a certain amount of money. So I mean, I don't want people to be misled to think that you can easily do a diversified portfolio in a big way. That it will have the kind of results that you are counting on immediately for smaller amounts. So there is a minimum that has to be prepared already. And surprisingly, if you're not aware, maybe if you're thinking of the minimum from a cash perspective, it's not necessarily a cash perspective. It could be the starting point could be a review of what you already have. So it could be that your investments are with, spread out. There are already different kinds of assets, probably different kinds of bonds, and that's something that could be a starting point. A review of that can be done by ATRAM together with you, and you can define how you wish to move on from those investments to coming into an ATRAM portfolio, and portfolio managers to now start stepping in and doing the investments for you.
Okay, thank you for that, Marcy. You've actually sort of answered the next question, but I guess we can get into a little more detail with it. So if
Okay.
one already has a mix of investments with ATRAM, which were made without the expertise of an investment advisor, how do you transition to a discretionary account?
Okay, very interesting. And I think my answer to that is let's talk. Because remember that it is not a matter of quick transition. Uh, the starting point when you made your investment decision was primarily based um, on your own review of your own understanding of the market. It was based on a period of time where there are different considerations that we have, no? So it's important to actually have that take-off point. It's always from the history of how you got it, and then we will have an understanding of where you are now and what do you want to do in the next few years, right? And that is what will define for us what do you do with what you used to have. How do you unwind it if you now need to unwind it? How do you transition it? No, so it in this case a very customized approach, and I can promise that in every engagement with a client, that is the starting point. We get to know the client, we get to know their investment experience, we get to know what they have, if they want to reveal that to us. And having known that, we can now work together to design the strategy going forward.
Okay, thank you for that, Marcy. I think we do have time for one last question.
Okay.
So what makes ATRAM's discretionary portfolio management unique compared to other firms?
Ultimately, I would say the way our structured framework has been designed in identifying the kinds of funds that will go into our investment universe is one of the most important factor and elements in how different we are. And combined with experience, professionally certified talent that work with those kinds of frameworks and um, structures and design our allocations, our strategies is another important element that makes it important. And last but not the least, the fact that the customer experience is truly about us being independently managing the portfolio, looking after it proactively, defending it from when market downturns happen. I think that's what really makes us quite different. And I'd like to say it's quite effective. And this pandemic has placed many people in situations where they could not avoid losses. No? And
Mhm.
I'm hoping that some of them are just paper losses. They didn't make a move. They're just waiting it out because that's the smartest thing to do. Those losses started off this year in double-digit numbers. But because of the work that Atram has done, in a very quick period of time, in just a matter of now 6 months, from a double-digit situation, we are now in a single low-digit situation. For them,
Yes.
if not already in a positive territory. So depending on when they had come in, we will actually see even some clients who are working with us already in quite a good positive territory. I can't reveal what that is, quite wide, but yes, very, very proud of that. And I guess that ultimately the message I want to leave for our audience today, and I'm so happy that you joined us to get to know what is discretionary investment management is all about. I'd like to leave this word with you. Investing on your own gives you a lot of hands-on experience. But when you come to a point when the money that you've invested is now at a critical mass, where the fear that your decision is already not sufficient, and the information that you have may not be sufficient, and most of all, that the assets that you can access is no longer enough. Think about working with professionals. And we would love to be the ones to take you through your journey, to be your partners, and educating you while going through it as well.
Okay. Thank you so much, Marcy, for joining us. And thank you to all our viewers for taking the time to join in. So, in behalf of ATRAM, stay safe and have a great day.